Mom humiliated me at my sister's engagement dinner in front of the wrong family. The groom's mother went completely still, stared at me, and whispered 3 words that drained every drop of color from my mother's face. My father said it like he was commenting on the weather. "We've given up on her." Small laugh, napkin still in his lap, fork halfway to his plate, like he'd said it 100 times in 100 living rooms, and had never once watched a room go quiet afterward. This time the room went quiet. I picked up my fork. I kept eating. The pork chop was good. $40 worth of good, which I knew because I'd seen the prefix menu on the restaurant's website when Paige sent the dinner details. I had spent 3 seconds deciding whether to order it or the salmon, and the pork chop had won, and I was going to finish it. The woman sitting across from me had gone very, very still. Catherine Ellsworth, silver bob, gray blazer, a Patek Philippe on her left wrist that I recognized from a presentation I'd sat through 18 months ago in a 42nd floor boardroom in Chicago, had set her fork down with a precision that was almost surgical. Her eyes were on me, not on my mother, not on my father, on me, and in her expression was something I hadn't seen on a stranger's face in a very long time. The specific, private arithmetic of a person doing math they already know the answer to. She picked up her wine glass, took one small sip, set it down. "Julia," she said, in a voice that made 4 other conversations stop. "Tell me about your cleaning work." I looked at her across the white tablecloth and the warm bread and the 47 people who were suddenly pretending to study their appetizer plates. I put down my napkin, and I told her, "Let me back up about 10 years, because none of this makes sense from the middle. My name is Julia Holloway. I'm 37 years old. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house in suburban Columbus, Ohio, the older of 2 daughters, in a family where worth was measured in credentials, and credentials were measured in how well they'd look written on a card. My parents, Diane and Gerald Weston, were not cruel people. I want to be precise about this because cruelty implies intention, and what my parents did to me never felt intentional. It felt more like weather, like the way a cold front moves through a room and nobody turns the heat on, not because they're being mean, but because they forgot you were in there. My sister Paige is 4 years younger. She's a marketing director at a mid-sized pharmaceutical company in Indianapolis. She has a master's degree in communications, a very clean LinkedIn profile, and a talent for being exactly what our mother envisioned when she imagined what daughters were for. She and I are not close. We are polite to each other the way countries with complicated histories are polite at international summits, carefully, formally, with our real feelings filed in folders nobody opens. I didn't go to graduate school. I went to Ohio State for business administration, graduated in 3.5 years because I took summer classes, and started my cleaning company at 24 in a 1999 Ford Econoline van with a pressure washer I'd bought used off Craigslist for $340. I named it Holloway Commercial Services. I kept my own name for it because I knew, even at 24, that I was building something, and I wanted it attached to me. My mother told her friends I cleaned houses. She wasn't lying, exactly. I just forgot to correct the missing part. The missing part was which houses. And the fact that houses had long since become hospitals, and universities, and office complexes, and federal courthouses, and the 283 people on my payroll, and the operations in 14 states. But those are details. My mother was always more of a headline person. I almost didn't come to the dinner. Paige had called me 6 weeks before. A Sunday afternoon, her voice bright and careful the way it gets when she wants something and is trying to keep it from sounding like asking. She and Garrett were engaged. Garrett Ellsworth. She'd met him at a work conference 14 months ago. She was very happy. She'd love it if I could come to the engagement dinner. The dinner was at Clements in downtown Columbus. Private room, 40 guests. A prefix menu that I was right about. $40 for the pork chop. I said yes for one reason. My grandmother Ruth Weston, 78 years old, bad heart, uses a wheelchair now but still drives herself to church on Sunday mornings and calls it a free country when my mother protests. She is the only person in my immediate family who has ever asked me a real question. The kind with a follow-up. The kind that requires listening rather than just waiting for your turn to compare. When I was 26 and the van broke down on the I-70 and I called home from a gas station because I didn't have the money for the tow, it was Grandma Ruth who answered and said, "How much do you need? And where's the gas station?" Not a lecture. Not a pivot to how this wouldn't have happened with a real job. Just the 2 pieces of information she needed to fix it. She loaned me $800 that I paid back in 4 months. She has never mentioned it since. I came to the dinner for Grandma Ruth. That's the whole reason. The first red flag was when I walked in. My mother was already doing what she does at parties, moving through the room in a practiced orbit, tagging people the way luggage gets tagged at an airport. Tom, retired fire chief. Sarah, nursing school, top of her class. Marcus and Beverly, he's in finance. She teaches at OSU. She had a fact for everyone, a credential to deploy, a reason you should be impressed. She reached me near the appetizer table. She looked at me for half a second. Then she looked past me. "Oh, there's Carol," she said, and moved on. I took a bruschetta and told myself this was fine. Expected even. I had a long history of telling myself my mother's skipping over me was fine. I had gotten very good at it. You practice something for 37 years, you develop a technique. I went to find Grandma Ruth, who was parked near the window in her wheelchair with a glass of champagne she wasn't supposed to have, and an expression of cheerful defiance. She took my face in both hands when I reached her. "You look good," she said, which from her means something specific. You look like yourself. It's the highest compliment she gives. So do you. I look like an old woman drinking champagne she's not supposed to have. Don't tell your mother. I sat with her for a while. She asked about the Nashville expansion. I told her about it last Thanksgiving, the only holiday I still attend, because she's there. She remembered the name of my operations manager. She asked whether the university contracts were renewing. She listened to the answers. I watched the room fill up. The Ellsworth family arrived as a group, which should have told me something. Garrett I'd seen photos of, mid-30s, brown hair, easy smile, the kind of kind of man who volunteers his seat on public transit without making it a thing. His father, Robert, walked in like a man who owned real estate, which it turned out he did. Commercial property development, third-generation family business, Central Ohio, and expanding. Then Catherine Ellsworth came through the door. I had seen her before. She didn't know that yet. She moved through the cocktail hour the way a chess player moves through an opening. Deliberate, efficient, cataloging, handshake, eye contact, next. She worked the room with the quiet purposefulness of someone who has been evaluating people in professional settings for 30 years and has stopped finding it difficult. Then she reached me. She stopped. Half a second. Maybe less. It was the length of time it takes a very controlled person to process something unexpected and decide what to do about it. I saw it clearly. A flicker behind her eyes. Not surprise exactly. The specific private recognition of someone who has placed a face. She took my hand. She held it one beat longer than she'd held anyone else's. "Julia," she said, "how lovely to see you here." I kept my voice even. "Mrs. Ellsworth, good to see you too." She held my gaze for exactly 1 second longer than the handshake required. Then she moved past me to greet Grandma Ruth. I turned back to the window. My champagne glass was in my hand, and I realized my grip on it had tightened without my noticing. She knows. I put that thought in a drawer and went to find my seat. We were seated at a round table, 12 of us, Paige and Garrett at the center, my parents flanking them, the Ellsworths across, Grandma Ruth to my left, and me filling the chair between Ruth and an empty one that turned out to be for Catherine. My mother spent the first course doing what she'd been doing at the cocktail hour, but with a captive audience now. She went around the table the way a docent goes through a museum. Here is Paige, her degree from Marquette, her promotions, the way she handled the rebrand last spring. Here is Gerald, 30 years in insurance, a good man. Here is Aunt Cindy, who volunteers at the hospital and whose son just made partner. She skipped my chair like it wasn't there. Not literally. She didn't physically skip it. The orbit of her introduction to her curved neatly around me, like water around a stone. One moment she was gesturing at Aunt Cindy to my left, and the next she was turning to describe someone across the table, and I had been edited out of the circuit without a word. Robert Ellsworth noticed. He's the kind of man who notices things like that. I recognized it in him the same way I recognize it in a certain type of executive, the ones who came up earning it rather than inheriting it. They watched the room differently. He looked at me directly. "What do you do, Julia?" And before I could take a breath, my mother pivoted from across the table with the practiced speed of a woman who has been dreading exactly this question. "Oh, Julia does cleaning work," a small, dismissive gesture, the hand flick, the one I'd seen 100 times, the one that means this topic is already resolved. "Residential, you know. She's been doing it since college." Under the table, Grandma Ruth's hand found mine. I felt her squeeze once, firm and deliberate. I squeezed back. I looked at Robert Ellsworth and gave him a small smile that said, "I know, I've seen this before. It's fine." He didn't look entirely convinced that it was fine, but he let it go, for the moment. I found the phone by accident, not Paige's phone. It was face down on the table, which is how Paige keeps her phone at dinners, a habit she picked up from our father, and a trait that I'd always considered one of her better qualities. I wasn't looking for it. I wasn't looking for anything. But between the appetizers and the main course, someone shifted something on the table. A bread basket, a water glass, I don't know, and the phone screen lit up with a notification. I have functioning eyes. The preview was 3 lines, a group chat name at the top, wedding planning, and then, visible without touching anything, my mother's message, time-stamped 6:07 p.m., 2 hours before dinner. "Whatever you do, don't let Julia talk about her work tonight. The Ellsworths don't need to know our family has a cleaning lady beneath it." Paige's response, time-stamped 7:14 p.m., 1 hour before, already handled. I introduced her as my sister in Indianapolis. That's it. A third message below that, cut off by the preview. The screen went dark. I picked up my water glass, set it down without drinking. "Whatever you do, don't let Julia talk about her work." I turned the sentence over in my mind. I examined it the way you examine something you've touched before but are seeing clearly for the first time. The specific shame of it. The precise architecture of a cleaning lady beneath it, as if what I did was something that had happened to me rather than something I'd built. Beneath it, I thought about my operations manager, Darnell Rivera, who has a 6 Sigma black belt and runs our hospital contracts division with a precision that I have never stopped being grateful for. I thought about our compliance director, Priya Mehta, who came to us from healthcare administration and rebuilt our OSHA protocols from scratch in 2021. I thought about the Nashville expansion, the 14 states, the $3.8 million contract I'd won 18 months ago by walking into a boardroom I'd never been in and presenting for 45 minutes to a table of 12 people who'd never heard of me. A cleaning lady beneath it. I set my water glass down without a sound. I folded my hands in my lap and watched the main course arrive and did not say a single word to anyone for approximately 7 minutes. Then my mother stood up. The speech she gave was polished. I'll give her that. She tapped her knife against her wine glass with the confidence of someone who has given many toasts in many rooms, and the table quieted around her, and she smiled the smile she uses when an audience is assembled, and she spoke about Paige. 2 full minutes about Paige, her degree, her promotions, her grace under pressure, which was a specific phrase my mother used with the practiced rhythm of someone who's rehearsed it, her kindness, illustrated by a story about Paige bringing soup to a neighbor during a snowstorm 6 years ago, her future, illustrated by a description of Garrett that was less a description of Garrett and more a list of reasons Garrett was an appropriate choice. She didn't say my name once. Grandma Ruth, to my left, was looking at her plate with the expression she gets when she's decided not to say the thing she's thinking. Robert Ellsworth leaned forward. "And your older daughter?" He looked at my mother, then at me. "Julia's here too, right?" The pause that followed lasted approximately 3 seconds, which is longer than it sounds. I watched my mother blink, find her footing, find her smile, smile, the one that comes back online like a generator clicking on after a power cut. This is our other daughter. She turned toward me the way you turn toward a piece of furniture you're pointing out to a realtor. Cleans houses for a living. Gerald, from his chair, unprompted, with the small laugh of a man who believes he is saying something benign. We've given up on her. Nobody joined the laugh. 3 seconds of silence. Across the table, Catherine Ellsworth set her fork down, slowly, the way a surgeon sets down an instrument, with intention. She looked at me. Julia, she said, tell me about your cleaning work. My mother moved fast. Oh, it's nothing fancy. She goes to people's houses, scrubs. I'd like to hear from Julia. That sentence landed on the table like a piece of crystal dropped on marble, precise, clean, unmistakable. My mother's mouth closed. Catherine Ellsworth kept her eyes on me, steady and waiting. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify is linked in the description. I put down my napkin. Here is the thing about being underestimated for a very long time. You develop a particular economy of words. You learn to say the exact amount required and nothing more. You don't perform. You don't embellish. You don't give people the satisfaction of a revelation, because you've learned that revelations made for an audience tend to get remembered as the audience's story, not yours. I have given this particular presentation in boardrooms and hotel conference rooms and over bad coffee in airport lounges. The venue changes. The words don't. I own a commercial cleaning company. We service office buildings, hospitals, universities. My mother's smile went thin. She makes it sound so. How many states? Catherine asked, still looking only at me. 14. My father's fork clinked against his plate. His hand had twitched. A small, involuntary thing. The kind of physical reaction you can't coach yourself out of. How many employees? 283. As of last month. Paige's head turned toward me, slowly, the way a person turns when they realize the building across the street from the one they're standing in has quietly caught fire. Catherine's hand moved to her purse. The motion was unhurried. She had done this before. She knew exactly where the card was. She drew it out and set it on the white tablecloth, face up. In the center of the table, directly in front of my mother. Navy blue cardstock. Clean sans serif font. A tagline I'd spent 2 days in my car testing out loud before I chose it. Holloway Commercial Services. Excellence in every detail. My mother picked it up. Her eyes moved across it. I watched the recognition arrive in her face in stages. The way a song takes a moment to place when you hear it out of context. The name first. Then the tagline. Then some private calculation that I couldn't see but could read in the way her neck went rigid. Wait! Her voice came out smaller than usual. You're her? Catherine's expression didn't change. I think you may already know the answer to that. Then she addressed the table. Not loudly. Not theatrically. The way someone who is accustomed to rooms listening to her simply speaks when she wants the room to listen. My company, Ellsworth Property Group, signed a $8 million annual contract with Holloway Commercial Services 18 months ago. 47 buildings across 4 states. A brief pause. Julia presented the proposal herself. She sat at my boardroom table. She answered every question we had for 45 minutes, including 3 that were designed to be difficult. She looked at my mother. I should say, she answered them better than some vendors who'd been in the industry 30 years. The color left my mother's face, starting at her cheeks, moved to her lips, moved to her hands. I could see them at the base of her wine glass, the knuckles going white. My father's hand had not moved from where it froze. Paige was looking at the tablecloth. Grandma Ruth was looking at her daughter, at Diane, with an expression I had spent 37 years trying to name, and had never quite managed. I could name it now, in this room, with clarity that felt almost physical. Patience. The specific, settled patience of a woman who has known a lie for a very long time, and waited, without hurry, for the lie to exhaust itself in a room full of people. The silence lasted long enough that a server appeared at the edge of the room, read something in the air, and retreated. My mother spoke first, because she always does. Well, a small, recovering laugh, the kind designed to reframe the mood. I don't keep up with all her business details. A mother can't be expected to. Diane, it was Robert Ellsworth. His voice was not unkind, but it was the voice of a man who is accustomed to stopping a conversation at the exact point where stopping it is necessary. I think the room might benefit from a minute. My mother closed her mouth. Robert looked at me. Something in his expression was not apologetic. More than that. The expression of a man who has made assessments of other people for a long time and is recalibrating one now in real time. We've actually looked at your Illinois contracts, he said. One of our project managers sent me your compliance report last quarter. I didn't put the name together until just now. I remember the inquiry, I said. We didn't have the capacity at the time. We might now? He nodded slowly, like someone filing a note. Garrett, who had been quiet through most of this, with the careful silence of a man who has just understood that his engagement dinner has taken a turn he didn't anticipate, reached over and put his hand on Paige's hand. A small, steadying gesture. For her, I think, not for the room. Paige looked up at me for the first time all evening, and what was in her face was not the thing I'd expected. I'd expected some version of the performance my mother uses. The quick recovery, the social redirect, the pivot to cheerfulness. What was actually in Paige's face was something rawer and less managed. It looked, if I had to name it in one word, like shame. Not performance shame, not the shame of being caught, the actual kind. The kind that sits in your chest. The dinner did not recover in the way dinners are supposed to recover. People finished their plates. The servers came back. Wine was poured. A cousin of Garrett's told a story about a hiking trip that lasted too long and nobody really listened to. The ambient sounds of a party resumed. Silverware, murmuring, the occasional laugh. But they were the sounds of a party going through the motions, not a party that had found its footing again. My mother attempted a repositioning during dessert. She found a story about my childhood, a complimentary one, which was unusual, about how I'd always been entrepreneurial, how I'd had a lemonade stand stand at age 7, how she'd always known I'd do something like this. She delivered it at half volume, aimed mostly at Aunt Cindy and a cousin named Beth, the kind of small audience where you can reconstruct a narrative without a formal retraction. I didn't interrupt. I didn't say anything about the lemonade stand story, which I'll note she had never told before this evening, and which contained a detail about the stand making $30 in one afternoon that I'm fairly certain is embellished. But I let it go. Some corrections aren't worth the room. Robert Ellsworth lingered as people began to leave. He caught me near the coat check, waiting for my jacket, my bag on my shoulder, Grandma Ruth's wheelchair parked beside me while she retrieved something from her purse. He extended his hand and I shook it. The Illinois inquiry, he said. I'd like to schedule a call. Actual conversation. No project manager in the middle. I'll have my assistant reach out, I said. What's your timeline? Q1 if we can. We can make Q1 work. He nodded. His eyes went briefly to where my mother was standing across the lobby, retrieving her coat, her back to us, then back to me. It was good to meet you, Julia. You too, Robert. He moved off. I turned back to Grandma Ruth. She was watching me with her hands folded in her lap and the expression she uses when she is choosing her words carefully, which with Ruth means she's decided they need to be right rather than fast. Did you know she'd be there? She asked. She meant Catherine. No, I said. Garrett's last name is Ellsworth. I looked it up. The property company. I knew it. I didn't put Catherine together with it until I saw her at the door. Ruth was quiet for a moment. What did you feel when you sat down next to her? I thought about this honestly, the way she requires me to. Calm, I said. Mostly calm. And then when Mom started talking, I just decided I was going to let it play out. Ruth's mouth curved at one corner, not a full smile. The specific expression she uses when someone has confirmed something she already knew. Your grandfather used to say that, she said. He said the truth is lazy. It doesn't need your help. Just leave it somewhere visible and it'll find its own time. I looked at her for a moment. I know you knew, I said. About the work. About how much I had. I know you knew and you never told them. That wasn't my story to tell, she said simply. The coat check attendant arrived with my jacket. I helped Ruth with hers, settled it around her shoulders. The lobby was clearing out, guests filtering through the revolving door into the cold, the particular end of evening dispersal of a party that's done with itself. Paige found me at the door. She came up on my left side, quiet enough that I didn't hear her until she was next to me. She was holding her coat against her chest instead of wearing it. Her eyes were red at the corners. Not crying, but close. Julia? I saw the texts, I said. I said it quietly, with no particular heat. The group chat. Your phone lit up at the table. She went still. I'm not going to have this conversation tonight, I said, but I want you to know I saw them. So whatever version of tonight you're about to construct in your head, just know that I saw them. Her mouth opened, closed. I put on my coat. I leaned down and kissed Grandma Ruth on the cheek. Thursday? I said. Thursday, she confirmed. Bring the good coffee, not the gas station thing. I never bring you gas station coffee. You brought me something from a gas station once, 2019. That was a Starbucks inside a gas station. It's different. It tasted like a gas station. I smiled. I straightened up. I walked through the revolving door into the February cold and stood on the sidewalk for a moment with the kind of quiet that comes after something you've been carrying for a long time has put itself down. 6 weeks later, Ellsworth Property Group signed a letter of intent with Holloway Commercial Services, 11 buildings in the Chicago Metro, with an option to expand into their Ohio and Michigan portfolios by Q3. My CFO, a methodical man named Conrad Phelps, CPA, 22 years in corporate finance, called it the cleanest LOI he'd seen in 2 years. The annual contract value was projected at $2.1 million, with the option adding another $900,000 if it exercised. I wasn't at the signing. I had an operational review in Nashville that day, and Darnell handled the Chicago meeting with our VP of Business Development, Keisha Torres, 8 years in commercial services, former regional director at a national competitor who left when we made her an offer she called the easiest decision she'd ever made. They sent me a photo afterward. Keisha is holding the signed folder. Darnell is grinning. The Chicago contact at Ellsworth is a project director named Marcus Webb, is shaking Keisha's hand. I saved the photo to a folder on my phone I keep for things I want to remember. It's not a big folder. I'm selective. My mother called me 3 days after the dinner. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was 4 minutes long, which I know because I watched the counter while I decided whether to listen to it. I deleted it at 3:47, not in anger, just because I knew, with a certainty that felt more like arithmetic than emotion, that I already knew what was in it, and none of it was new. My father didn't call. Paige texted once, 2 weeks after the dinner. It was a long message, more than she usually sends, more than the careful, summary-level communication we normally exchange. She talked about the group chat. She apologized. She said things she said she should have said years ago, and maybe she should have, and maybe someday I'll be ready to hear them. I read it 3 times. I didn't respond yet. I'm not sure what I want to say. I'm working on it. Grandma Ruth came to the office in March. I hadn't suggested it. She called on a Tuesday and said she wanted to see where I worked, and I said yes and sent a car because the parking situation near our building is a genuine problem. She arrived in her wheelchair at 10 a.m., and I gave her the tour myself. The operations floor, the contract management suite, the training center, where we were running a safety certification session that morning, 12 new hires. A trainer named Esperanza walking them through the OSHA standards with a patience and clarity I have watched and admired for 3 years. Ruth sat in the doorway to the training room for about 5 minutes watching. Then she followed me to my office, corner office, 3rd floor, large windows, the Columbus skyline low and gray and very much mine. And I made her coffee in the machine by the credenza, the good kind, not gas station. She sat with her cup in both hands and looked around the room. The framed photo of the Nashville team, the whiteboard I still use covered in the chicken scratch that Conrad calls illegible, and I call a system. The small tray on my desk where I keep sweet things that matter. A worn pen from college, a paperclip Grandma Ruth once bent into the shape of a star when I was 7, which she denies, but which I have kept for 30 years. She looked at the paperclip. She looked at me. You know what your mother said to me after dinner that night? She said. I shook my head. She said she had no idea it had gotten this big. She paused. That's what she called it. Gotten. Like it happened to you. I didn't say anything. It didn't happen to you, Ruth said. You built it. I looked out the window at the skyline. I know, I said. I know you know. She took a sip of her coffee. I wanted to say it out loud in this room. We sat there for a while, in the good quiet that you can only have with someone who has known you since before you were yourself.